Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today's reading is for the full moon in Scorpio, which I can see is actually going to be in just under an hour from right now, from when I'm recording this. And I've had a few goes at creating this video this week, and none of the attempts that I have made have really been sufficient or even cohesive or coherent. There's some quite intense astrological aspects occurring right now. I guess it's worth mentioning, first of all, this is all wrapped inside of the current Mercury retrograde, which I think lasts a few more days before Mercury stations direct. Yeah, so there's that, and that I'm noticing a strong sense of obscurity right now, which is funny because we have this full moon, right? So full moons tend to illuminate, and yet my experience of this moment has been very much, I don't want to say lack of clarity, but there's kind of a cloudiness. The full moon will be in Scorpio, and whenever we have a full moon, we have an opposition with the sun. So the sun is opposite the moon in Taurus. And the other astrological aspects that are fairly major right now are the square aspect formed by the sun and the moon with Pluto. And Pluto rules Scorpio. So Pluto is the ruler of this full moon. And then we've also got this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, also in Taurus. So the reason I mention both of these aspects is because overwhelmingly the energy that is being transmitted right now is an energy of transformation. Pluto rules the underworld. Pluto is the threshold between life and death. So very strong sense of transformation that is wound up in these ideas. And Uranus is much more of a sudden revolutionary. Uranus will restructure and redefine, and will do so in a fairly sudden, unexpected way. There's a real sense of upheaval that comes from Uranus. Change always requires some kind of sacrifice, something that is left behind or given away. There's a surrender that occurs, and it's fundamentally destabilizing for that reason. So the first card that I'm presenting today is Death, and in the Death card we see Death, the archetype, which is embodied by this Grim Reaper type figurine. There's kind of a couple of things I want to touch on here in this imagery. We have the decapitated head, which is almost planted in the ground. And the head represents an old way of thinking or being. It's an old system, an old belief, an old paradigm, an old worldview. The second imagery that I want to really look at here is the veil. So we see Death in this beautiful flowing gown, and in their right hand they are lifting the veil on this imagery, on this sort of swampy river that the head is planted at the side of. The lifting of the veil is so critical in this transformative moment. Whenever we are moving through change, we are always coming into a deeper relationship with experience, with our environment, with ourselves. And so inherent in transformation is this idea of a veil being lifted and a new reality being revealed to us. So while transformation can be inherently destabilizing or chaotic, and if we are resistant to the change, even painful, there is also this beautiful medicine available to us, the medicine of coming into a deeper understanding of reality. So this death archetype really frames the whole reading for this full moon. Now let's look at the card for the moon, which is in the first decan of Scorpio. The card is the Five of Cups, and we see the Five Cups, which are presented in a marshy, swamp-like environment. There is rain falling from the sky, and other than that, there really isn't much of a sense of life or vitality here. The cups are flat and two-dimensional, and we're unable to see if they really contain anything. All of the fives live at Gerbera, which is the Sephiroth, otherwise known as Strength of Judgment. In Gerbera, we are offered a space to really stress test, to really consider the rigor and structural integrity of whatever we're working with. And the strength of judgment comes about through holding that space. And whilst judgment can be quite severe, it doesn't need to be punitive. It can simply be a point of seeing, a point of recognition. And from that recognition, we can then be informed to make choices, to initiate transformation. The Five of Cups is really showing us where we need to The Five of Cups is inviting us into our emotional landscape to sit with the parts of ourselves that maybe need to be more nourished, where we need some rejuvenation in our emotional body. The key here is this idea of rejuvenation. Whilst the landscape is fairly inert, there is rain falling and it is being replenished through that cycle of water. So the invitation is really to connect with our emotional body and where maybe we haven't been nourishing that, and how we can create space to facilitate. No, we don't need strategy here. Actually, this is just simply about acknowledgement. Whereabouts do I need rejuvenation? So here's the card for the sun, which is in the first decan of Taurus. We see 5 discs that are bound together by chains, and the discs are cracked and decaying. The messaging in this card is around the use of resources. Not only the use, but really the valuing of resources. When resources are bound up tightly and not really brought into service, honoring their purpose, then we start to see decay and atrophy. Either it may be a physical object that is inert and stationary and rusting, or it may be in our mobility through the world that is not free-flowing and maybe could be more free-flowing if a particular resource is liberated and implemented. So the messaging of this card is really around reevaluation. It's around resources that are cracked or heavy or have a feeling of restraint associated with them. And like I said before, we don't need to be punitive about this recognition. It's simply information that we can work with. We have more Gerbera energy here in the placement of Pluto in the first decan of Aquarius. and the elemental association here is swords or air, which correspond to the intellectual or mental plane. We see in the card these 5 swords that are crisscrossing and signaling very clearly, do not enter. The central downward pointing sword is cracked, and actually by the Aquarius sigil. And here we are again recognizing perhaps where our intellectual processes, our ideology, our beliefs, our language might be constricted or creating a blockage of some kind, not facilitating freedom of expression, freedom of thought, and creativity and expansion that we are inherently gifted with. The medicine of this card is around recognizing where our thinking is not really serving our creative purpose. And we don't need to do anything about that. It's simply a point of seeing. The transformation is inevitable. In fact, if we're able to just simply have this recognition, then in a sense, the transformation has already begun. The final card we'll look at today is for the conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus, which is in the final decan of Taurus. The card is the 7 of Discs, and honestly, I felt quite a bit of cognitive dissonance when I saw this card in the context of this reading for the first time. And if we look at the imagery of this card, we see this tree producing fruit and a shovel next to the tree in the ground, signaling that the work has been done, the soil has been tended, the plant has been planted, it has been watered, it has been provided with all of the nutrients that it needs, it has been maintained, and here we are producing fruit, ready for harvest. I suppose in the context of this reading, which is largely around surrender and acknowledgement and recognition, and a lot of really just needing to look at our shadows. The sweetness of this card really seems to create quite a strong contrast. So I was thinking about this specifically with the planetary influences of Jupiter and Uranus. And we know that Jupiter is an amplifying energy. Jupiter magnifies, and that Uranus is revolutionary. Uranus expedites change. And so my read on this energy of reaping the benefits of our hard work, of our toil, maybe that's part of the way forward through this transformation. And so for me, this card really is maybe a beacon of some kind. It is the light at the end of the tunnel of all of this sort of shadow work. It is a reminder of an abundant harvest that can come from the planting of a seed that is nourished and watered and maintained. And so this card kind of offers a little bit of light to this quite intense, shadowed reading. And while it's really important to sit with the 5s of this reading and allow space for contemplation and for self-reflection, allow space to do the shadow work and cut off the head of everything that is no longer in service of our present creative self. There is also this hope here, the hope of this seed that inevitably, if cared for, will bear fruit in the future. So that's my read on this astrological moment. As I said in my intro, these are quite severe astrological aspects, so please just be gentle with yourself, go easy, and I really hope that what I've shared with you today offers some support and guidance as we continue to journey through this all. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and a share. I would really appreciate that. Thank you.